Hi everyone, welcome to week 3 in 3011. So this week we are really continuing the discussion we had started last week on the features of human service organizations. We shall try to look at the key elements of organizational culture and how they shape practice. And we shall be reflecting on your placement experience and how that is shaping your own practice. And of course, we shall try to identify how organizational culture can get to support or hinder practice. So we shall be drawing on examples from your own work and the insights you had started contributing since last week. And we shall be looking at the very important work of the Royal Commission into institutional responses to child sexual abuse to deepen our understanding of how organizational culture can shape practice in very, very problematic ways. So, what is meant by organizational culture? It's really difficult to define organizational culture unless we understand the word culture itself. So, culture really entails the patterns of beliefs, assumptions, values, norms, and practices which are shared by a group of people. This also entails the routines, the rituals, the language, and the artifacts shaping everyday practices, the attitudes, and the behaviors of the people sharing the same culture. So, culture is also something which is developed and is transmitted to future generations through the process, which we all know as the process of socialization. Culture has got many features, among which it is something which is dynamic, it keeps changing over time, but also it is something which is learned. We learn our culture again through the same process of socialization, as said, and culture is not deterministic. Um, it's not because I belong to a certain cultural group that necessarily I will act or behave, in a way which is consistent with that culture all the times. And I think that's linked as well to the fact that it is dynamic. It gets to shape behavior and it is an important element of our identity. So behind a certain culture, we have beliefs, and those are things maybe people can state. But behind that, we have values, and behind everything, we have the assumptions which are underlying, the values, the beliefs, and every other elements of culture. Edgar Kane tried to classify three key layers of culture in what is known as the cultural iceberg. In the learning material for this week, you'll find a triangle coming from the same scholar. Don't be confused. It's exactly the same logic and the same thing we are talking about. The key idea here is that, culture is really complex, involving observable elements such as practice, language, symbols, the rituals, the ceremonies. Those are things we can easily observe, but there are many more elements of culture which are not observable. And these fall under, categories such as assumptions, the values and even the norms. Those are things we do not easily observe or which might take a bit of a while in an organization for you as an outsider or somebody who has just joined the organization. Might take really a bit of a while for you to get to understand these assumptions and these values and even the norms shaping, what you get to observe as elements of culture. So, three key elements of culture, according to the Edgar Skane's cultural iceberg. Assumptions which are taken for granted and beliefs which are taken for granted. And these are really probably the most hidden aspects of culture. People won't even tell you exactly why they are acting in a certain way, unless, of course, if you ask them and then they tell you, we are doing this because we believe in X or we believe it will lead to X result. Um, And then you have also values, which are still parts of the hidden aspects of culture. And these also engage, norms about what is right or wrong, what is important and what is not important among, staff members of an agency. And you can see these being reflected also in slogans, mission statements, and so on and so forth. But then we also have the artifacts, which are the observable product of culture. And these can be anything like symbols, stories, texts, ceremonies, rituals, and, even how people behave on key occasions, such as during award ceremonies or morning tea ceremonies when they are welcoming new staff members. So really, this is telling us that culture is probably the most complex feature of human service organizations. Very complex because not only it includes observable and not observable, non-observable elements, but also it involves both formal and informal practices. It draws on societal values and gets to define who belongs and who gets to be excluded to a certain organization. It operates at both the visible and the invisible levels, visible elements such as language, rituals, and symbols, as I said, but also engages hidden elements. And at times these are the hardest to engage with because you simply don't know them unless if you want to take more time observing and getting to understand them. Culture is transmitted through socialization, but also through everyday interactions and organizational history. It includes both positive and negative elements, but more importantly, it engages both objective and subjective elements. You can see these subjective elements, for example, in how success is measured across different organizations. And this can be also reflected even in the values of different organizations. There are things which can be considered as success if you are working with Mission Australia, but which might not be considered as such if you get to work with, I don't know, Save the Children, or if you get to work with, child safety and so on and so forth. So in many cases, what I'm trying to say here, culture is really complex. And you might find people making statements such as, diversity and inclusion is our DNA. Because of course culture is an important element of identity even among organizations. But it's not as simple as that. It doesn't mean because people make these statements, it doesn't mean that they will act consistently all the times. And it might take really a lot of effort for you to get to understand what really culture is among people working in a certain organization. So I suggested a short explainer here, which you might want to look at and see whether, I really hope you find that helpful. See you in the next recording.